Hi, welcome to today's show. I'm Les Sizik.
And I'm Avian Rogers. We just built this hexagon picnic table and a planter box to match it, and we're going to show you how to build one too.
We've chosen redwood for our project, but you could use anything that'll stand up in the weather and that's available in your area. Pressure-treated wood, cypress, or cedar would do very well.
You know, the skills that you learn in building this outdoor furniture projects today, you can apply to a lot of different kinds of outdoor furniture projects. So why don't we get started?
I'm ready.
Before we start building our table, let's take a look at all the component parts of the table. We unbolted the tabletop from the table to show you how it all fits together.
And as you can see, the top looks rather like a wheel. There's a series of spokes. This one long one goes clear across the entire top. Then there are 4 shorter ones that butt into the main one. We've also made these very simple miter cuts at the end of each spoke and some rather complex looking ones down here, but please don't worry about those. They're really simple, and we'll show you how to do those in just a minute. Now, to tie this all together at the hub, we're going to apply this gusset right here, and we'll nail that in place, and then this top will be extremely rigid.
Now, the bottom ring, or the seating ring, is also made up of these spokes, and it's made the same way that our tabletop is, and you can even see that we've got a gusset here. Now, as for the seating, these are made up of 2x4 planks. And we also use 2x4 planks for the tabletop. We just fill it into the center. Now, the legs are attached by bolts at each spoke. And then we'll also put in bolts here, right here at the top, and they bolt into the spokes of the tabletop. So we're going to have a nice, strong table.
If you were going to bake a chocolate cake and you hadn't done it before, you'd follow a very good recipe, and that way you'd come out with a chocolate cake instead of chocolate gloop. The same thing as with this project here. You need a very good set of plans, and here we have an example of that. You can see it starts with a nice photograph of the finished project, so you fix in your mind exactly what you're aiming toward. Then we go to a plan view of the table itself, both the top and the bottom. Now look at the top plan here. It gives a lot of detail. Here are the dimensions of the planks themselves. Here's the overall dimension of the top right across it, and it shows how the spokes go together and exactly where that gusset goes that we looked at a moment ago. It does the same thing on the bottom. It shows lots of detail here, the overall dimensions and specific dimensions of the parts. Now it gets even better as we go over here. Here's an elevation of the table. Further detail of construction, detail, it shows all how these angle cuts are made, and look at here. Here's even a detail of how this cut is made at the end of the spoke. Here's a further detail of the leg itself, so that there are not going to be any mistakes made there when you put it together. And it also shows some, beginning to show how it is constructed. Here's the spacing between the planks on the top, where the gussets go, where the bolts go, exactly how to do those. And then over here is an exploded view of the entire table. Now each part is labeled in this view. It helps you put it together, and it also helps you identify the individual parts. For example, this part N is shown down here, and it gives its precise dimensions and what that part is called. So having gotten a good set of plans and thoroughly understood them, so you know precisely how your project is going to go together and how you cut all the parts, it's time to think about what we're going to do this with. Now this project is simple because we don't need complicated tools. Ordinary shop tools, a circular saw, an electric drill, wrench, screwdriver, things like that. And if you had a table saw, that would help too, and part of the cuts we're going to be doing on a table saw. Now let's review the steps we're going to go through to build this table. First, we're going to cut the spokes. Then we'll cut the planks and legs, cut the gussets, assemble the spokes, attach the planks and gussets, attach the legs, and then finally, when it's all put together, put a finish on our table to protect the wood. Now, if you're ready, let's get to work.
So let's take a really close look at the spoke system of our table. We have 2 spokes coming off of one long spoke on each side, and each end is finished off with a 30-degree miter cut. Now, a miter cut is simply a generic term for an angle cut. Now here, we've got a simple 30-degree angle cut. There are 2 of them that line up like that. Then here, this looks like a little bit more complicated cut, but it's really not. It's simply two 30-degree angle cuts that are made by cutting one 30-degree angle from one side, flipping the board over, and then cutting another 30-degree angle. So right now what we want to do is start by cutting our long spoke. And to do that, we'll be cutting one of our 30-degree miters here, and then the other one over here. And we've checked our plans, and from the long point to the other long point, it's 46.5 inches. So to make our cut, we're going to be using a circular saw. Now I've already got my 30-degree angle marked on my board, and the way that I got that is I took this protractor and lined up my bevel just like that, and then I tightened her down. So we've got a good, strong, steady 30-degree angle. Took that bevel and scored my line across like that. So I'm going to make this cut, flip the board over, measure 46.5 inches, and cut my other bevel. I just want to make sure to put my glasses on. We cut our 30-degree angles on both ends for our long spoke. So now we're into the nitty-gritty of cutting our angles for our spokes. We'll start with a 30-degree angle, the simple one right here. Now one thing I want to say, avoid the mistakes that I've made in the past and cut your inside angles first before you cut your spokes to length when you cut your 30-degree angles. Okay, now to do that, what you need to do, like I did here, is I adjusted the base of the saw to 30 degrees. I lined up my marks and tightened down this adjustable screw. And I also clamped the piece down right here so that as I'm cutting across here, it's going to stay in position. Now, an important thing here is make sure when you're running your saw across your board to keep the base running flat along your wood. We're ready to cut our most complicated cut, which is the double 30-degree miter cut. And I'm set up to do that. I've drawn a line all the way around the board, so everything is going to line up just right. I'm going to clamp it down so that my saw's nice and steady. Now, the way this works is kind of interesting. I take a tri-square, or you can use a finishing square, line it up along that line, and then I run the base of the saw along that tri-square. So I'm going to rip that end.
Let's take a look at how we make these miter cuts on the table saw. You can see this one has already been done. We've got the table saw set up at a 30-degree angle. Some of you may have a table saw in which you tilt the blade. Otherwise, the setup is just about the same. We've got a long extension here on my miter gauge, and I've got a stop set up down here so that the opposing pairs of short spokes will be exactly the same length. This is a big help, this setup here. Now you can see I've made that cut already. I just flip it over for the double miter, and I've got the blade guard removed. The guard has to be removed because my extra fence here would run into the guard if I tried to make this cut. So we've got it all set to go. This will give me my double miter cut. We've got all our spokes cut. Now let's see how we do the planks. We want to cut our planks that go around both the tabletop and the seat. The important thing about these planks is that every one of them, all 6 that go around this row, be exactly the same length. And that all 6 that go around this row be exactly the same length, right on through the table. If they're not precisely the same length, it's going to be awfully difficult to assemble these parts. The same thing is true for our seat. We have to do exactly the same length for the 6 around the outside and the other 2 rows as well. And the way to do that on the table saw, of course, we're going to use our miter gauge, and it's set up at 30 degrees. And I've already made the first cut here on this end. We just slip it against the stop here. With the stop set up this way, we can make identical cuts time after time after time. Very simple to do. Without this, it would be much more difficult. Now let me see. Let's go ahead and make that cut. Okay, we've got all our planks, our legs, and our spokes cut out. There's 2 other pieces we have to do. One is the gusset. There's going to be 3 of these. They're about 7.5 inches in diameter, and they go right there. These can be cut with your jigsaw, or they can be cut on a bandsaw if you have one. Be sure to pre-drill these before you attach it to the spokes. The other part we need to do is this cleat that fits on both sides of the end of the spokes for the seat. They go on here just like this. Give a little extra support for the seat. Also pre-drill these because this wood is real thin and it'll split if you don't. Once these parts are all done, we're ready to put the whole thing together.
We're starting to put together our spokes now. And there's an easy way to set it up so that all the pieces come out exactly equidistant. So what we do is we find the center point on the long spoke, both the length and the width. And that comes out right there. Then we draw our center lines down all the other spokes so that where these points all converge, we know that's where we make our attachment. We end up with a little X right there. Okay, to start making the attachment, what I first did was I face nailed through the long spoke at an angle for each spoke like so, so that I know that the nail is penetrating down the center of each of these spokes. Okay, now for these spokes, what I'm going to want to do is I want to pre-drill like so. And I've already done that here. The reason I do that is so that when we go to nail, we don't want these ends to split out, which they would likely do if we didn't pre-drill. Okay, once we nail this piece in, then our last little piece of the star comes in like that. And this time we'll pre-drill from the top at an angle like that. And we'll drive our nail in just like so. Then we'll come back and put on our planks, and once that's done, we come back and put on the gussets. And we repeat this exact same process for the star of the seating portion. It's coming out just right.
Oh, it's
Looks
perfect.
great.
We're putting on a first row of planking on our tabletop, and here's where the accuracy we stressed earlier pays off. If all these cuts are made just right, then this thing is going to be so much easier to put together, and your geometry turns out perfectly. Another thing we've done is we've chosen very carefully these hot dip nails to put on for two reasons. One is we don't want rust spots to show up on the tabletop because that would look terrible. And also, if these things rust out, the table's going to fall apart. So it's be careful and pick out a nail that's not going to do that.
Yeah. We also pre-drilled on the ends of our plank so that when we do nail, the board's not going to split out on us. So now we can start putting in the next row. But what we want to do is use 16-penny nails, or you can use a screwdriver, anything that's going to space these boards out so that water will run between them and not cause any rot.
Well, you all set?
I sure am. So now we'll flip them over and we're ready to put the legs on. We're coming down to the finish line now on our table and we're getting ready to put our legs on. The way we do that is we turn the tabletop assembly and the seat assembly upside down, and then we've propped up the seat assembly all the way around in this nice wide flat area so that everything is sitting at 13 inches high. That way we know that our legs are going to line up just right.
That's the important part, is to get this whole thing lined up, get our spokes exactly lined up. And then the legs just fit right in because we've cut that miter on the end of them, and it's almost an automatic thing. What we do is to start, do the opposing sides here on one spoke, clamp the legs in place, get them nice and tight on the table itself, get them tight right here, and then you're ready to drill the holes for the bolts. One hole goes in the tabletop assembly and one up here.
One last torque.
Looks like you got it.
Okay, shall we lower it? Now that we've got our table built, we're going to show you how to build a planter.
Here's a neat little planter box to go along with your picnic table. We've checked the plans over carefully, and we see there's not much to it, and there are not many parts to cut. We've got a box made up of 3/4 inch material that we're going to nail together. We've got legs made up of 2x6s that get screwed to the box, and then we have a top part also made of 2x6s with these miter cuts on it that are going to be doweled through here. We're going to use some good, strong outdoor waterproof glue and then nail the top part onto the base box. That's about all there is to it. Let's go down and watch Avian cut the parts for us.
We're using a table saw to cut out all of our pieces for our planter. You could also use a circular saw and use the same kind of jig that we showed you earlier, but with a 45-degree miter. Now, I've already done the straight cuts for the box. Now what we're doing is cutting our 45-degree miters for our legs and for the top rim. And I've set up this jig right here so every piece is going to be exactly the same length. I've already cut one side, so now I'm going to go ahead and cut the other side and cut out the rest of our pieces.
These are the boards we're going to use for the bottom of the planter, and they need some holes drilled through them for drainage. Now, we could do that with a hand drill, or if we have a multi-purpose tool, we can set it up as a drill press and do it this way. Got a piece of scrap on the table. The three pieces that we're going to drill here, we're going to drill the hole all the way through all three pieces at once. Very simple. Just move it right up, do the next one. That piece on the bottom is a piece of scrap just to protect the table. That's all there is to it. Let me show you how the box gets put together. It's in two sections. We start with the bottom section with some simple butt joints right here. Then we tack our cleat in along the bottom of the bottom section, and we drop the bottom parts in. You can see those are the ones that were drilled. And we take the top of the bottom of the box, slide that right in here like that. And these two will be held together by the legs themselves. And I've lightly tacked the legs together with some finishing nails in the corners here. What will really hold this whole thing together is the screws that go through the legs into the box. I'm going to line it up with my registration mark there. And then the next job is to simply screw number 10 brass 2-inch screws, get countersunk right through here. That holds the legs together and the box, makes a nice assembly, and then we're going to follow those countersinks down with a plug.
The last step to building our planter is putting on the top. But we want to make sure that our top doesn't pull apart due to weather conditions, expansion and contraction. So what we do is we dowel at every joint. We're going to put 2 dowels. And the way we do that is we put 2 marks that span across both sides of the joint. So they're going to line up. And I've numbered the joint so when we go to put it together, the boards aren't going to get mixed up. The way we do that is we use a dowel jig. Now I've got my marks here on this side, so I'm going to align my dowel jig up, and I tighten it down. Now I've got this drill here with a depth gauge, and the reason I set the depth gauge is I only want to drill slightly more than half the length of this dowel. That'll allow for some glue, and then we'll go into the other side of the joint. Now once I drill this one hole, I'll release the dowel jig, slide it down to the other mark, and do my second joint.
Another way to drill the dowel holes for our top pieces is with a horizontal boring machine. Not everybody has one, but the multi-purpose tool we're using does, so we're going to use it here, and this is how it works. We've got our miter gauge set up at 45 degrees, and we've put this extension piece on it. We've got a clamp down here that'll stop the piece, keep it from moving, and hold it exactly in the right place. And we've preset the depth we want right here on our quill. That's all there is to it. We just line it up here. Make sure we're in the right place. We're ready to drill that first hole. Slide it right down, line it up carefully, drill the second hole, and the piece is finished. That's all there is to it.
Once you finish drilling all your holes for your dowels, then you insert your dowels. I put some glue on that side, tap it in, and then I'm using waterproof epoxy on both sides of all the joints. It's essential that you do that when you're gluing for outdoor furniture. Okay, now the best approach to putting this together is to assemble the opposing corners first, and then these opposite corners will go together real nicely. Now I just need to put a little bit more epoxy up here, and then I'm ready to clamp the whole assembly together. You need to work with this epoxy pretty quickly because it sets up fast. So I want to get it into my clamps right away. Okay, got a good fit here, good fit there. Well, that came together fast.
Yeah, this is a pretty easy project. We're ready to pick out a plant to put in here.
Well, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah,
And we
me too.
also put glue under here, so it'll hold nice and tight, and we're using hot dip galvanized nails.
And now I think we're ready to talk about a protective coating for both this and our hexagonal table.
Now that we've completed our picnic table and our planter box, it's a good time to talk about finishes.
You might decide to use no finish at all and just let your project weather naturally. Or you might want to slow down the effects of rain and sun and use a wood preservative like this one. Or you might want to add some color to your project and use a stain or an oil stain. Or you could even use a varnish.
You can apply these finishes with a brush, sponge applicator, or rag. Read the manufacturer's instructions. Or you could use an air compressor with a spray gun attachment and spray your finish on. Whatever you prefer.
Whatever you do, I hope you enjoy your picnic table for many, many years. I'm Les Cizik.
And I'm Avian Rogers. Thanks a lot for watching.